I got into my husband's car and found a tube of personal lubricant in the glove compartment. I slid into my husband's Buick one evening, the leather seat cool against the back of my legs. When I opened the glove compartment to look for a pack of tissues, I found something I never expected, a half-used tube of personal lubricant. For a moment, the world tilted. My breath caught in my throat, but I didn't shout, didn't confront. Instead, I simply shut the compartment with deliberate calm, carried the tube into the house later, and in the privacy of the kitchen swapped its contents with clear industrial superglue. I placed it back exactly where it had been, silent as a shadow. And what unfolded afterward forced the neighbors of our quiet Texas suburb to dial the fire department in the middle of the night. If you're hearing this now, thank you for being here. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel, and tell me in the comments which city you're watching from. I love knowing how far these stories of justice travel. I sat alone at the kitchen table that night. The silence inside the house felt heavy, as if the walls themselves were complicit in holding secrets. The pendulum of the old clock on the wall, our wedding gift from my late mother, swung back and forth with relentless rhythm, each tick a reminder of a life I was beginning to suspect had been nothing more than a carefully crafted lie. My husband Richard had just come home from yet another business dinner. His expression was more than simply fatigued. He looked almost haunted, carrying on his shoulders a burden too shameful to share. His face was etched with lines that hadn't been there years before, grooves of guilt written into skin that once beamed with youthful charm. He threw his blazer across the couch as though he'd rehearsed the gesture, yanked at his tie as if it were choking him, and collapsed into bed without even bothering to rinse the day's sweat away. The expensive cologne he wore still lingered in the air, but tonight it was intermingled with another fragrance, a saccharine, floral perfume. It clung to his shirt like a stranger's signature. It wasn't mine. That scent felt like an audacious announcement from another life he had been living right under my nose. Within minutes, the deep hum of Richard's snoring filled the house. Once upon a time, that sound had lulled me to sleep, a reminder of safety. Now it mocked me, a lullaby for the foolish. I rose with the quiet discipline of a wife seasoned by 40 years of marriage. I picked up the trail of clutter he'd left behind, his blazer, his worn wallet, his phone still glowing on the coffee table, his outdated laptop half open. Normally I wouldn't pry, but the screen pulsed with a new email notification. Richard never used email. "Carol," he always said to me, "these tech gadgets are too complicated. I'd rather just call." Yet here was a message, glowing like a red flare in the dark. Against the better judgment drilled into me since childhood about privacy, I tapped it open. The message was brief, only a single line, but it ripped through me like glass. "You were amazing tonight, Dad." The words blurred. My fingers trembled as I read them over again. That one word, Dad, ricocheted through my skull. Who on earth called him that, in such a tender, intimate tone? Not our son, not our daughter. Both were grown, living their own busy lives, and certainly not in that manner. The sender's address was a jumble of meaningless letters, no real name to give away the identity. I scrolled, but there was nothing more, no thread, no history, just this one sinister scrap. My chest tightened, air refusing to come. Fear washed over me in a cold rush, seeping into my bones. I turned toward the bedroom where Richard snored peacefully, his face slack in shameless rest, utterly oblivious to the storm consuming me. I slipped his phone back onto the table, hands trembling so violently I nearly dropped it. I tried to keep moving, robotic in my chores, tidying the rest of the room. When I gathered his pants to toss into the laundry, I felt a crisp fold of paper in the pocket. It was a receipt, fresh and white, from a steakhouse in San Antonio. The date read that very evening. My breath caught again. San Antonio. Richard had told me he was dining with his associates in Dallas. A bitter chuckle broke free. He hated Dallas traffic and always complained about the drive. But San Antonio, his late mother had lived there, and he'd always spoken of it with nostalgic fondness. He'd taken me there only a handful of times. Who had he brought to this dinner? The receipt showed dinner for two, a pricey Cabernet Sauvignon, the exact wine he'd bought for me on our 10th anniversary. My mind leapt back to that night, candles flickering, his eyes shining with pride as he toasted my bakery's grand opening. It was a night I had enshrined as sacred in memory. But now, that memory curdled, tainted, a photograph in an album of lies. I pulled out my own phone and snapped pictures of the receipt, of the email. The digital evidence felt necessary, even if I still clung to scraps of denial. My heart raced, dread and fury entwined, as if I were teetering on the edge of a cliff, watching the earth give way beneath my feet. I slipped into the garage. Richard's SUV sat there, engine still warm, the smell of fuel and faint perfume trapped in the air. My flashlight beam swept across the floor mats, the door pockets, the cup holders, loose change, an empty water bottle. Nothing unusual, until my fingers brushed against something slick inside the glove box. I pulled it out, and bile rose in my throat. A half-squeezed tube of lubricant, residue crusted at the cap, evidence I could not unsee. Richard hadn't touched me in years. His excuse was always age, fatigue, dwindling desire. But this told a different story. Shaking, I slid it back in place, wiping my palms raw with a napkin as if I could scrub the betrayal off my skin. Under the back seat, I found wadded napkins steeped in that same floral perfume. A vulgar scent, defiant, evidence of an intruder in my life. I photographed everything, napkins, tube, every damning item. When I re-entered the kitchen, I clutched the counter for balance, my body trembling uncontrollably. I scrolled through Richard's phone again, hunting for further proof, but his inbox was scrubbed clean, drafts folder empty, deleted folder wiped. He'd erased it all with the precision of a man well practiced in deception. By morning, I hadn't slept a wink. The images looped relentlessly. Napkins, receipts, perfume, that single cruel email. I fried eggs, made toast, poured Richard his strong black coffee. He shuffled in, hair mussed, eyes bleary. He sipped, then muttered his usual refrain. Important meeting today. Won't be home till late. His performance was seamless. My rage burned quiet but hot beneath my skin. I forced a smile, my voice light. Drive safe. As soon as he left, I dialed a number I'd kept buried for years. An old friend, Marjorie Miller, had once recommended a discreet investigator she trusted. Carol, she'd told me, when we were both in our 40s. If you ever need to know the truth, call Thomas. He's professional and careful. I never thought I'd need that lifeline, but now my voice shook as I asked Marjorie to connect me. Within an hour, Thomas messaged me directly. Mrs. Collins, don't worry. I'll meet you at noon, downtown cafe. At noon, I walked into a little cafe on Main Street in San Antonio. The air was thick with roasted coffee, usually a comforting aroma, now oddly foreign. I chose a corner seat where no one would notice me. Thomas arrived, a solid man in his 50s, simple shirt, eyes sharp with quiet intelligence. I handed him a flash drive containing my photos, the napkins, the tube, the email, the receipt. My voice cracked. I think my husband is cheating. This is all I have. He nodded, expression unreadable, taking notes in a small notebook. "Mrs. Collins, I'll start surveillance today. You'll know soon." I thanked him, fighting tears. It felt unreal, hiring a stranger to trail the man I'd built my life with. Yet here I was. That evening, as I worked alone at my bakery, the scent of flour and sugar around me, my phone buzzed. A photo from Thomas appeared. My blood pounded in my ears. Richard, dressed in his pale blue shirt, was entering a restaurant, holding hands with a woman. I zoomed in and nearly dropped the phone. It was Anna, my daughter-in-law. Her little black dress clung to her frame, her lipstick garish against the candlelight. They weren't family in that moment. They looked like lovers. More photos arrived. Anna leaning across a table lit with flowers, her smile wide, Richard gazing at her with tenderness I hadn't seen in decades. Not even when I was that smiling girl from Memphis he'd first courted under the Tennessee stars. I replayed the images, disbelief clawing at me. Anna, the woman I'd welcomed into my family, taught to bake peach cobbler, embraced like my own daughter. My husband, father of our children, partner of 40 years, together. When a video followed, showing Anna whispering in his ear, Richard laughing with a joy I no longer recognized, my chest caved in. I saved everything to my drive, time-stamped and cataloged. Proof. The next morning, Thomas sent more. Pictures of Richard and Anna leaving a law office downtown. Then, arm in arm, entering a glossy hotel. A video captured them on a balcony, Anna's head resting on Richard's shoulder, before a quick, damning kiss. I slumped at my bakery table, head in my hands, the sweet smell of rising bread clashing with the bitter taste in my mouth. My marriage, my family, my life. It all felt like a fabrication. I printed the photos, slid them into an envelope, and hid it beneath old family albums, a safeguard for the battle I knew was coming. When Richard stumbled in near dawn, smelling of alcohol, spinning some tale about an out-of-town partner, I nodded, as always, my voice steady, but inside I was ice. Not long after, Thomas sent me something worse, an audio file, recorded outside the hotel, Anna's voice, cool and ambitious. "Dad, hurry with the fake contract. I want that whole chain of bakeries. That old hag needs to be out." Then Richard's voice, confident, smug. "Don't worry. Carol knows nothing. She trusts me completely." The room spun. They weren't just betraying me with their bodies. They planned to strip me of everything I'd built, the bakery chain that was my life's work, every crumb earned by sleepless nights and aching hands. I copied the audio to my flash drive, documented the time, the date. I would not let them win. That evening, Richard sat across from me at dinner, glass of wine in hand, speaking casually. "Carol, I've got some business papers this week. Maybe you should review them. Complicated stuff." I lifted my fork, forcing composure, though Anna's recorded words echoed in my ears. "Sign the fake contracts." I smiled thinly. "I'll take a look later." Inside, though, my decision was sealed. I would strike first. Later that night, when Richard collapsed drunk into bed, he left his car keys on the nightstand. Their metallic glint called to me like a signal. My heart thundered, but my resolve was iron. I crept to the garage, pulled open the glove box, and there it was, the tube, their secret tool of betrayal. I carried it to the kitchen, emptied it, and carefully refilled it with superglue. I tested the nozzle. Perfect, indistinguishable. I slid it back into place, every detail restored as if untouched. My revenge had begun. Back inside the house, I placed the keys neatly back on the nightstand where Richard had left them, as though nothing had been touched. I sat on the living room sofa with an old novel open in my lap, eyes unfocused on the words. The pages blurred, my mind running wild with every thought of what he and Anna had done, what they were still planning. Across the room, Richard snored like a man with a clean conscience, unaware that his charade was unraveling. When dawn arrived, I was already at the bakery, kneading dough with fierce determination. Every push and fold of the bread was a channel for the fury churning inside me. My hands ached, but I welcomed the pain. It reminded me I was alive, still in control of myself. Later that morning, I returned home carrying a carton of eggs. Richard was awake, sipping his coffee at the kitchen table. I placed breakfast in front of him, smiling faintly. "I have to drive to Nashville tomorrow," I told him, keeping my tone casual. "I'll be signing a new supplier contract. Won't be back until late. Can you handle dinner?" His eyes lit up, not with worry, but with something like relief. He covered it quickly with a weak smile. "Of course, honey. Go take care of business. I'll be fine here." That glimmer in his eyes stung worse than a slap. He wanted me gone. He wanted her here. He left shortly after, muttering about office work, but not before I caught a glimpse of his phone lighting up on the counter. A missed call. The name flashed clear. Anna Thomas. Before I could touch it, Richard rushed back in, scooped up the phone, and switched the screen off with nervous haste. "Forgot my phone," he muttered. His false grin didn't hide a thing. That day at the bakery, I worked like a machine, greeting customers, signing invoices, mixing dough, while my mind stayed fixated on Richard and Anna. The plan I'd begun had to continue. I would catch them in their own trap, expose them without lifting my voice. That night, when Richard crawled into bed, I pretended exhaustion. "I need to sleep early," I murmured. "Long trip tomorrow." He patted my shoulder lightly, his usual dismissive gesture, then rolled over. I kept my eyes shut, breathing evenly until his snores resumed. Then I slipped quietly from the bed, crouched low, and followed the glow of his phone across the hallway. Hiding behind the living room curtain, I watched him lean against the window, speaking in hushed tones. "Yes, of course. Come over tomorrow. We don't need hotels anymore. Carol has to travel. She'll be gone all day." From the faint crackle of the speaker came Anna's syrupy laugh. "That's perfect, Dad. Finally we can relax." He chuckled, low and eager. "Come early. I'll be waiting." I bit my lip until I tasted blood. My own home, our son's home, was to be their nest. I slipped back into the bedroom, opened a drawer, and pulled out an old handheld recorder I'd once bought for my son David's college lectures. I tested the battery, slid in a fresh one, and switched it to continuous record. With careful hands, I tucked it behind the bookshelf near our bed, hiding the wire beneath a framed photo of David and Anna on their wedding day. Their smiles stared out at me, frozen in a lie I hadn't yet recognized back then. By the time Richard returned to bed, I was lying still, feigning sleep, though my mind pulsed with grim resolve. At dawn, I rose before him, set up a skillet of oil on the stove, and attached a thin string to the igniter. The string ran across to the window, tied to a heavy coffee can. One tug and smoke would billow out as if a fire had erupted, not enough to burn the house, but more than enough to send neighbors running. I tested it once, smoke spiraling quick and dark. Then I snuffed it out, wiping every trace clean. At 7 a.m., I packed a large handbag, slipped on a jacket, and shook Richard awake. "I have to catch the early bus, signing that contract in Nashville," I told him calmly. He yawned, kissed my hand with performative care. "All right, be careful. Call if you need me." I left, walking across the quiet street to my neighbor's home. Mrs. Peterson opened the door, surprise written on her face. "Carol, what are you doing with that big purse so early?" Could I stay here a while? I asked softly. I need to watch the house. Her eyes searched mine, but she didn't press. She poured me coffee, set me by her front window, where I could see my driveway clear as day. Around 10 a.m., a taxi pulled up to my yard. Anna stepped out, sunglasses hiding half her face, wearing a floral dress as though she were sneaking to a date. Richard opened the door quickly, ushered her inside. I gripped my mug tighter. The recorder feed buzzed faintly through my earbuds. Anna's laughter rang clear, the clink of glasses following. "All right," Richard's voice rumbled. "No more hotels. This place is ours today." Anna giggled. "You really know how to pick your moments. That old hag is gone, right?" I clenched my jaw. The word cut deeper than any knife. Moments later, the sound of bed springs groaned through the recorder. I closed my eyes, told myself to hold steady. Then a sharp, panicked shriek. "What the hell is this? We're stuck!" Richard barked angrily. "Shut up. Let me see." A smile tugged at my lips despite the ache in my chest. I tugged the string from Mrs. Peterson's window. Flames licked the skillet. Smoke spiraled skyward. Within minutes, neighbors shouted, "Carol's house is on fire!" Phones dialed 911, panic filling the street. Mrs. Peterson gasped beside me. "Carol, your house." I widened my eyes, played the part. "Oh, Lord." Within minutes, sirens wailed. A fire truck skidded to a halt in front of my home. My son David leapt from the driver's seat in his fire chief's gear. My stomach twisted at the sight. He shouted commands, sledgehammer breaking through the front door, hose team rushing behind him. My heart broke knowing what he was about to discover. Through my earbuds, I heard Anna's desperate sobs, Richard's furious growls. "Don't scream! Hold still!" Then David's voice cracked through the feed. "What in God's name?" Gasps, curses, nervous laughter from his crew. Someone murmured, "Oh my God!" David's roar silenced them. "Quiet! Out!" His tone wasn't just commanding his men, it was desperation. A son shielding his own dignity. Neighbors gathered on the lawn, whispers flying. "Is that Richard? With Anna?" Unbelievable. Poor Carol. My pulse pounded. I stayed hidden in Mrs. Peterson's parlor, watching the smoke fade as firefighters discovered it was just an oil flare. But the damage was done. Richard and Anna were dragged from the house, sheets wrapped awkwardly around their glued bodies, shame etched on their faces. Phones captured everything. Mrs. Peterson herself filmed quietly, her eyes flicking to me with suspicion, pity, maybe even respect. David stood pale and rigid in the yard, his team lowering their eyes as they packed equipment. The ambulance wailed as it carried Richard and Anna away, neighbors still buzzing, shaking heads in disgust. Father-in-law and daughter-in-law, disgraceful. I slipped from Mrs. Peterson's house, blending into the crowd as though I'd just rushed home from the bus station. Gasps of sympathy and scandal met me. I kept my face neutral, letting the storm swirl without me. At the hospital, hours later, a weary doctor approached me. "Mrs. Collins, we've managed to separate them. No lasting injuries, just surface damage." I feigned relief. "Thank you, doctor." The nurse handed me 2 tubes of soothing ointment. Pity softened her young eyes. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Such a terrible situation." I thanked her, but once her back was turned, I slipped the ointment into my purse and replaced it with mustard tubes I'd prepared. My fingers moved deftly, years of baking precision aiding me. In the hospital room, Richard opened his mouth as though to explain. "Carol, I cut him off, placing the mustard tube on the bedside table with cold finality. I turned and left. Minutes later, screams echoed down the hallway. Anna's shrill voice. "It burns! My skin!" Richard's curses mingled with her cries. Nurses rushed, doctors scrambling, but whispers rose among other patients. That's them, the scandalous pair from this morning. The humiliation spread like wildfire. Mrs. Peterson's video was already circulating the neighborhood. By nightfall, social media brimmed with gossip. I sat in the hallway, purse on my lap, unshaken. Then David arrived, face like stone, folder in his hand. I had asked him earlier to retrieve the envelope of evidence and divorce papers I had hidden in my drawer. He handed it to me without a word. I entered the hospital room, dropped the folder on the table, my voice steady, cold. 40 years end here. Sign these, then vanish from my life and my son's. Anna collapsed, pleading with David. Honey, please forgive me. I made a mistake. He stared at her, eyes like steel, and walked out without a word. Richard reached for me, voice trembling. Carol, don't, please. I pulled my hand back. Don't speak. You made your choice. I walked out without looking behind me, my heart a tangle of rage and grief. In the hall, David leaned against the wall, head in his hands. His whisper was barely audible. Why, Mom? Why, Dad? Why her? I held him, silent, sharing the weight of his shattered world. Weeks passed. The bakery thrived more than ever. Customers streamed in, offering support, calling me strong, resilient. Mrs. Peterson beamed as she picked up her pastries. Carol, the neighborhood's proud of you. You defended your business and yourself. I smiled, though inside I still carried shards of pain. But strength is often made from broken pieces. David moved back home, suitcase in hand. I'll help with the bakery, Mom. Whatever you need. I hugged him, my heart swelling with both sorrow and gratitude. Each morning, we opened the shop together, me at the ovens, him handling invoices and clients. Evenings we ate simple meals at the little kitchen table, just the two of us. Slowly, quietly, life stitched itself back together. Sometimes he'd ask for flan, his favorite, and I'd smile as we stirred caramel side by side, just like when he was a boy. For those small moments, peace returned. On weekends, I joined a cooking club at the community center, trading recipes and stories with women my age. They laughed at my peach cobbler, declaring it the best in town. I smiled, remembering my Memphis roots, remembering who I was before Richard's lies. Sundays I sat in church beneath stained glass, whispering prayers not for Richard, not for Anna, but for David, for myself, that we'd keep finding the strength to move forward. And when neighbors whispered that Richard and Anna had ruined themselves, that I had won, I only smiled faintly. Winning had cost me a family. But I still had my son. I still had my bakery. Most importantly, I still had myself. Did you like my story? Tell me in the comments which city you're listening from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And don't forget to like and subscribe so I can keep sharing more stories like this one. Your support means the world to me. The weeks after the scandal blurred together, though every morning I woke with the same dull ache in my chest. For 40 years I had lived with Richard's presence in my home, his routines, his voice filling the kitchen. Now there was only absence, an empty chair across from me at breakfast. Yet that emptiness felt cleaner than his lies ever had. Word spread across our Texas suburb faster than yeast in warm water. Everyone knew about Richard and Anna, the affair, the fire department call, the humiliating hospital ordeal. Some neighbors avoided me, perhaps too uncomfortable to meet my eyes. Others dropped by with casseroles or pies, as if betrayal could be smoothed with food. I smiled politely, accepted their offerings, and carried on with my work. The bakery became my lifeline. Customers poured in, curiosity drawing them at first, then loyalty as they tasted my breads, pies, and sweet rolls. Mrs. Peterson stopped by almost every day. "Carol, your shelves are emptier by noon now. People aren't just buying, they're supporting you." I nodded with gratitude, though inside I often felt hollow. Strength was something I wore like an apron, tied on each morning, hiding the bruises of my heart. David moved into the spare room. At first he said little. He worked his shifts at the fire department, then came home to help me knead dough, take inventory, or scrub trays. At night, we sat at the kitchen table eating simple suppers. He rarely mentioned Anna. When her name came up in the neighborhood gossip, his face hardened like stone, shutting the door on the conversation. One night after dinner, he asked softly, "Mom, do you ever think things could have turned out differently if you'd confronted Dad earlier?" I looked at him carefully. His eyes searched mine, but his voice held no blame, just weary curiosity. "Maybe," I admitted, "but sometimes silence is the only armor we have. If I'd shouted, accused, demanded, I think he would have twisted it, denied it, made me the fool. Quiet gave me time. It gave me evidence. It gave me justice." David nodded, staring at his hands. "I understand. Quiet can be stronger than noise." From then on, he opened up more. He told me about his long shifts, the fires he'd fought, the rescues he'd led. He told me about the night of the smoke at our house, the moment he broke down the door and found his father and wife tangled in disgrace. His voice cracked as he described the shock on his crew's faces. "I wanted to vanish, Mom, to erase it all. But then I thought of you. You didn't run. You stood, so I had to stand too." My eyes filled with tears, but I didn't let them fall. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "We'll stand together, David. Always." With time, the routine of the bakery and the rhythm of life steadied us both. David proved a natural at handling clients, charming the hotel managers, negotiating better prices for bulk orders. "The Grand Hotel wants double the pastries next week," he told me proudly one morning. "They say no one in town bakes like you." I smiled genuinely for the first time in weeks. "Then we'd better double the dough." We rose before dawn each day, side by side. The oven's warmth, the smell of fresh bread, the chatter of customers. It all became a balm. Slowly laughter returned, small at first, then freer. One Saturday, David spilled flour across the counter, and we laughed until tears streamed down our faces. That moment felt like sunlight breaking through after a long storm. Still, shadows lingered. Sometimes I caught David staring into space, his jaw tight, as though replaying everything he had seen. One evening, he admitted, "I don't think I'll ever forget it, Mom. Walking into that room, seeing them like that. My father, my wife." His voice broke. I held him close. "Memories fade, David. They don't disappear, but they soften. One day, this won't be the first thing you see when you close your eyes." "I hope so," he whispered. On Sundays, I began attending church again. Sitting beneath the stained glass, the sunlight painting the pews, I prayed for resilience, not revenge. I asked for peace for David, for healing in our fractured family. I didn't pray for Richard or Anna. I left them to face their own consequences. The town never forgot, though. Whispers followed them everywhere. I heard that Richard had moved into a small apartment on the edge of San Antonio, his reputation in tatters. Anna had fled to her sisters in Oklahoma. No one saw them together anymore. Betrayal had bound them for a while, but humiliation tore them apart. Sometimes neighbors would lean across the bakery counter, voices lowered. "Did you hear? Richard's lost his job. No company wants him after the scandal." Or, Anna tried applying for work at the law office downtown, but they laughed her out the door. I would only nod, neither gloating nor sympathizing. Their downfall wasn't my victory. My victory was standing tall in my own bakery, with my son by my side, my dignity intact. One evening, as I locked up the bakery, David joined me at the counter. "Mom, you know what customers say about you?" he asked. "What's that?" "They say you're the strongest woman in town, that you turned humiliation into strength." I laughed softly. "Strength doesn't mean I didn't cry, David. It means I cried and still kept baking." He smiled, the first real smile I'd seen on his face in months. As autumn came, the bakery grew busier. Tourists visiting San Antonio had heard the story, some sympathetic, some gossipy. They came to see the woman who'd exposed betrayal with silence and patience. I served them all the same: warm bread, sweet pies, quiet dignity. One afternoon, Mrs. Peterson and I walked through the town square, her arm linked with mine. She whispered, "People still talk about Richard and Anna, you know, but mostly they talk about you. They say you're the one who came out stronger." I smiled faintly. "Maybe, but winning cost me everything else." She patted my hand. "You didn't lose everything. You still have David and yourself. That's more than most get." Her words lingered with me. Months passed. David began smiling more, even joking again. He told me stories from the firehouse, sometimes light, sometimes heavy. "We pulled a child out of a burning apartment today," he said once, his voice trembling. "She was scared, but she lived. That makes it worth it." I hugged him tightly. "I'm proud of you. You're all I have left, David. Promise me you'll stay safe." He looked into my eyes, steady and sure. "I'll never leave you, Mom." Those words healed something inside me that had been broken for too long. Life moved forward, not perfect, not free from scars, but real. On quiet evenings, I baked flan just for David and me. On Sundays, I prayed beneath stained glass. On weekdays, I greeted customers with a smile that felt more genuine each passing day. And when I looked back on everything, on Richard, on Anna, on the fire, the hospital, the whispers, I realized something. They had tried to strip me of my bakery, my family, my dignity. Instead, they lost everything. And I remained. The bakery bell rang often now, each jingle a reminder that life goes on. I survived, I rebuilt, I endured. And I hope, wherever you're watching this from, you remember, silence can protect, patience can expose, and dignity can rebuild. So tell me, what city are you watching from? I want to know how far my story travels. And don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel, so I can keep sharing more stories of quiet strength, betrayal, and survival. Your support means more than you know,